Shadow the Hedgehog had a stellar year in 2024 with his appearance in the Sonic movie and also with his Shadow Generations game that was just oh so good. One thing that I completely slept on, however, was his manga that came out in that same year, and after reading it, I just knew I had to talk about it. So without further ado, this here's the Shadow manga. However, before we get into it, I just want to remind that this is a manga and not a comic like I usually cover, so we're going to be reading from right to left if you'd like to follow along on the screen. Our story starts off on the space colony arc, and with a bit of a twist. We get to see the bio lizard ramming around the place, and my god, he looks so menacing here. I love it. This sets up the scene perfectly for Shadow, who would then swoop in and save the day. Rushing in, Shadow ends up kicking the bio lizard, and in one fell swoop, the beast is out for the count. As Shadow walks away from the cheering scientists, he thinks about being called the ultimate life form. Now, the fact that he's made from a space creature and the fact that he hasn't been able to fulfill his purpose makes him feel like he really isn't that ultimate being. He was created to be a wonder drug that would cure Maria, but even with his space DNA, there was no cure for what was ailing Maria. Shadow is then left feeling pointless, and he really struggles with his self. That is until Maria shows up to surprise him. The two have this really adorable dynamic, and Maria takes Shadow to go see the sunrise over Earth. Maria is infectiously optimistic as she expresses her joy over seeing the sunrise, which she's seen many times before. But sadly, it doesn't last long as her illness starts to get to her. After this, Maria explains to Shadow that even though he couldn't heal her, Shadow has to get out there and experience life and feel joy, as there is more to life than just being a tool created to help others. This is something that Shadow struggles a good deal with, and after bringing Maria back to her room, Shadow ends up reflecting on how he actually enjoys being around Maria, and life here isn't so bad as long as she's by his side. Well, time for things to start getting bad. A little while later, Maria and Shadow would be looking out over the stars, and it's here that they would end up seeing Gun coming their way. Shadow would rush to try and save the scientists, and it's here that we would learn that Gun is here to dispose of every dangerous biological experiment. And they're doing so by wiping everything out. They're gonna open fire on everyone and destroy everything here. Shadow once again rescues these scientists, and despite this, the same scientists that once praised him before now are ready to throw Shadow under the bus. The scientist begs Gun to let him live, as he is after all a human just like them, and there's no reason that he should be killed because of a lab animal like Shadow. This man, despite everything Shadow has done, is ready to leave him behind as just a worthless experiment. But it's no use. Gun has made up their mind and they open fire on the scientist. And so Shadow flees to find Maria before things get worse for her. Shadow gets back to Maria, who he finds telling a group of soldiers that she would never be associated with a lab animal, as that is disgusting. And this clearly breaks Shadow's heart upon hearing it. But then she lets them know that Shadow is more than just a lab animal. He's the one that she adores, and he has just as much depth and personality as any other person. They could torture her, but they'll never find out anything about Shadow from her. A gun soldier then takes out his gun and pulls the trigger on Maria. And in an absolutely amazing moment, Shadow rushes in and catches the bullet. Then, in a flurry of attacks, Shadow takes out the gun soldiers, but just as he goes to check on Maria, a soldier walks into the room, and Shadow can see some kind of ominous eye behind him. As Shadow tries to figure out what's happening, the soldier fires and Maria is shot. Shadow starts getting headaches, and he realizes that the space creature DNA that he's mixed with might be manipulating the humans, and that's what caused Maria to get shot. Shadow vows to kill them all, but just then, Maria wakes, and Shadow tries to take her to the sick bay, only to then be trapped in an escape pod by her. Shadow is then sent to Earth, and Maria is left with the gun soldiers in honestly the most heart-wrenching scene I have seen in a manga in a long while. She dies right in front of Shadow just before Shadow is jettisoned into space. Shadow screams out in what is honestly one of the coolest drawings I've ever seen of this edgy-hedgy, and suddenly Shadow finds himself in white space from the Sonic X Shadow Generations game.